The morning light filtered through the gauze curtains of Clara Hayes's bedroom window, casting soft shadows across the hardwood floor. She had been awake for 20 minutes, lying still in the pre-dawn quiet, listening to the familiar sounds of her neighborhood stirring to life. The coffee maker gurgled from the kitchen below. A dog barked 3 houses down. And then, as it did every morning at exactly 7:15, came the soft creak of the Rodriguez family's back door. Clara rolled onto her side, her hand reaching instinctively for the camera that lived on her nightstand. Through the gap in her curtains, she could see into the backyard next door. Ben Rodriguez emerged, coffee mug in one hand, toolbox in the other. His dark hair was still messy from sleep, and he moved with the careful quiet of a father trying not to wake his daughter. For 6 years, Clara had watched this morning ritual. Ben would survey his small kingdom, the vegetable garden. His late wife had planted the swing set that had seen better days, the fence that seemed to require constant maintenance. He would set down his coffee roll, up his sleeves, and lose himself in whatever project needed his attention. This morning, it was the section of fence that separated their properties, a victim of last week's windstorm. Clara lifted her camera and adjusted the focus. Through the lens, Ben became a composition of morning light and shadow, concentration and solitude. She had never photographed a person with such consistency, such devotion. Her professional work focused on architecture, the clean lines of buildings, the interplay of structure and space. People were too unpredictable, too messy with their emotions and their complications. But Ben was different. In all her years of observation, she had never seen him lose his temper, never seen him move with anything but purpose and gentleness. Even now, wrestling with a stubborn fence post, he worked with patience that spoke of deeper reserves of strength. The camera clicked softly as Clara captured the moment, Ben's profile against the morning sky, his hands working the wood, the small furrow of concentration between his eyebrows. It wasn't until he looked up directly at her window that she realized what she had done. Their eyes met across the narrow space between houses, his gaze finding hers through the camera lens. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Clara felt exposed, caught in her silent voyeurism, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. But Ben didn't look angry or disturbed. Instead, he raised his coffee mug in a small salute and smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. Clara lowered her camera, mortified. She had been photographing her neighbor without permission, documenting his private moments like some sort of domestic paparazzi. What kind of person did that? What kind of person spent 6 years watching someone else's life instead of living her own? The kind of person who had canceled her own wedding 8 years ago because the thought of forever terrified her more than the thought of forever alone. By the time Clara had showered, dressed, and worked up the courage to face the day, Ben had moved his repair project to the front yard. She could hear the steady rhythm of hammering as she prepared her morning coffee. One shot of espresso, no sugar consumed, standing at her kitchen window while reviewing her schedule on her phone. Today's agenda included a site visit to photograph the renovation of a historic Seattle theater, followed by her twice-weekly visit to Evergreen Manor to see her father. The theater job was prestigious, the kind of architectural photography that had built her reputation. The visit to her father was necessary, a duty she performed with the same quiet discipline Ben applied to his fence repairs. The hammering stopped. Clara glanced up from her phone to see Ben standing at her front gate, still holding his hammer, looking uncertainly at her door. He had never come to her house before. In 6 years of being neighbors, their interactions had been limited to polite waves, packages accepted during deliveries, and the occasional borrowed cup of sugar, always initiated by his daughter Lily, never by Ben himself. Clara set down her coffee and walked to the front door, suddenly conscious of her appearance. She had dressed for work in dark jeans and a soft gray sweater, her long black hair pulled back in its usual neat ponytail. Professional, unremarkable, safe. "Hi," Ben said when she opened the door. Up close, she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his work shirt brought out the olive tone of his skin. "I hope I'm not bothering you, but I wanted to ask, this morning when you were—" He gestured vaguely toward her upstairs window. "I'm sorry," Clara said quickly. "I shouldn't have been. I didn't mean to invade your privacy. I was just—" She trailed off, unsure how to explain 6 years of silent observation without sounding like a stalker. No, Ben shook his head. "You weren't bothering me. Actually, I was wondering, are you a photographer? Professional? I mean—" Clara nodded, surprised by the question. "I thought so. I've seen you leaving with all that equipment." Ben shifted the hammer from one hand to the other. The thing is, my daughter Lily has this school project about community helpers, and she wanted to interview a photographer. I know it's presumptuous to ask, but would you maybe be willing to talk to her? She's 9, and she's been fascinated by cameras ever since she found her mother's old Polaroid in the attic. The mention of his late wife created a small, awkward silence. Clara knew about Sarah Rodriguez, of course. In a neighborhood like Wallingford, news traveled quickly, especially tragic news. Young mother car accident on a rainy night 5 years ago. Husband and daughter left behind. Clara had watched Ben navigate those early months of grief, had seen him sitting alone in his backyard at midnight, had witnessed the way he threw himself into home improvement projects as if he could rebuild his life along with his house. I'd be happy to help, Clara heard herself saying. When would be convenient? Ben's relief was visible. Really, thank you. Maybe this evening I could make dinner for all of us, if you'd like. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad. Lily would love it. Clara almost said no. Dinner felt too much like stepping across an invisible line she had carefully maintained for years. But Ben's smile was warm and genuine, and she found herself nodding before her cautious brain could intervene. 7 o'clock, Ben asked. 7 o'clock, Clara confirmed. The Evergreen Manor was a 15-minute drive from Clara's house, nestled among tall fir trees that gave the facility its name. Clara made this journey every Tuesday and Thursday, carrying her a camera bag and a thermos of coffee that her father would claim to drink, but usually left untouched. Henry Hayes was 78 years old and disappearing by degrees. Clara found him in the sunroom, as she always did, sitting by the window with a photo album open in his lap. This was one of his good days, she could tell by the way he looked up when she entered, his blue eyes bright with recognition. Clara, he said, and her heart lifted slightly. On bad days, she was the nice lady who visits, or sometimes Sarah, a name that belonged to no one in their family but felt familiar to him somehow. Hi, Dad. Clara settled into the chair beside him and opened her camera bag. I brought the prints from last week. This was their routine. Clara would photograph her father during each visit, then return with printed copies for his collection. It wasn't therapy exactly, but it gave them something to focus on besides the slow erasure of his memories. The photos served as anchors, proof that moments had existed, that they had shared them together. Look at this, Henry said, pointing to a photograph in his album. It was an old picture, probably from the 1970s, showing a woman with long blonde hair laughing at something off camera. Clara's mother, Margaret, captured in a moment of pure joy. That's Mom, Clara said gently. I took that picture, Henry said with pride. She didn't know I was watching. She was making breakfast, humming some song. I can't remember which song, but I remember thinking she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Clara studied the photograph more closely. Her mother was indeed beautiful in the image, but there was something else, an intimacy in the way she was captured, as if the photographer's love for his subject was visible in every detail. Clara had seen thousands of photographs in her professional life, but she had rarely seen love made so visible. You were a good photographer, Dad, Clara said. Henry closed the album and looked at her with sudden intensity. Clara, do you have someone who makes you want to take their picture every day? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? Your mother. Every morning for 30 years I wanted to photograph her. Not because she was posing or because the light was perfect, but because she was alive and she was mine, and I never got tired of looking at her. Henry's voice grew softer. Pictures aren't for keeping the past, sweetheart. They're for understanding the present. Clara felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition she wasn't ready to name. Dad, you spend too much time behind that camera, Henry continued. When's the last time someone wanted to take your picture? Clara didn't answer her, but her father's words followed her as she drove home that afternoon. When's the last time someone wanted to take your picture? The question implied being seen, being valued, being worthy of preservation. Clara couldn't remember the last time she had felt any of those things. At 6:30, Clara stood in front of her bedroom mirror, changing clothes for the third time. She had started with jeans and a casual blouse, then switched to a dress that felt too formal, then back to jeans with a different sweater. Finally, she settled on dark jeans and a soft blue cardigan that brought out her eyes. Not because she was trying to impress Ben, she told herself, but because Lily deserved to see a professional who took pride in her appearance. The walk to Ben's front door was exactly 17 steps. Clara had never counted before. Ben answered her knock with a dish towel over his shoulder and flour in his hair. Hi, he said, stepping aside to let her in. Fair warning, I may have overestimated my cooking skills. Clara stepped into the Rodriguez house, and was immediately struck by how different it felt from her own carefully curated space. Ben's home was lived-in, comfortable, full of the beautiful chaos that came with raising a child. Lily's artwork covered the refrigerator, a pile of books teetered on the coffee table, and the air smelled of garlic and tomato sauce and something indefinably warm. Dad burned the first batch of garlic bread, announced a voice from the kitchen doorway. Clara turned to see Lily Rodriguez, 9 years old, with her father's dark eyes and a gap-toothed grin. She wore jeans and a t-shirt that proclaimed her love for marine biology, her long brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Lily," Ben said with mock sternness, "we don't tell dinner guests about culinary disasters." "Why not?" Lily asked. "Clara's our neighbor. She probably smelled the smoke." Clara laughed, actually laughed for the first time in weeks. "I did smell something interesting around 6 o'clock. "See," Lily said to her father with obvious satisfaction. "I told you." Ben shook his head but smiled. "Clara, meet my daughter, the most honest 9-year-old in Seattle. Lily, this is Ms. Hayes, the photographer who's going to help you with your school project." "Just Clara is fine," Clara said, extending her hand to Lily, who shook it with serious formality. "I have so many questions," Lily said. "Like, do you only take pictures of buildings? And why do you get up so early? And do you have a dark room and—" "Lily," Ben interrupted gently, "maybe let Clara get inside before the interrogation begins." As they moved toward the kitchen, Clara caught sight of the living room and froze. There above the mantel hung a photograph she recognized, one of her own works from a gallery showing 6 years ago. It was a black and white image of a family silhouetted against a window, the composition emphasizing the quiet intimacy of the moment. Clara remembered taking it, remembered the young woman who had purchased it, remembered thinking it was one of her best pieces. The young woman had been Sarah Rodriguez. Clara's breath caught in her throat as the realization hit her. She had sold that photograph to Ben's wife, had watched Sarah study it carefully before making her decision to buy it. "This will be perfect in our new house," Sarah had said. "It captures what I want our home to feel like." "Clara," Ben's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you okay?" Clara forced herself to look away from the photograph to focus on Ben's concerned face. "I'm fine," she managed. "Just, that's a beautiful picture." Ben followed her gaze to the mantel. "Sarah bought that at a gallery downtown right after we moved here. She said it reminded her of what she wanted our family to be." His voice carried the gentle sadness that always entered when he spoke of his wife. "The photographer was incredibly talented. I always wondered what happened to her, if she kept working, if she's still in Seattle." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. She opened her mouth to tell him the truth, but Lily chose that moment to tug on her arm. "Clara, come see my mom's camera," Lily said, pulling her toward the stairs. "Dad said you might know what kind it is." Clara allowed herself to be led upstairs, grateful for the distraction. Lily's bedroom was a wonderful mix of childhood interests, marine biology, books, art supplies, a collection of seashells on the windowsill, and there on the desk an old Polaroid camera that had seen better days. "It was my mom's when she was in college," Lily explained, carefully lifting the camera. "Dad doesn't know how to make it work, but I thought maybe you could teach me." Clara took the camera, gently running her fingers over its familiar weight and texture. It was a vintage model, probably from the early 2000s, well used but well cared for. "This is a wonderful camera," she said. "Your mom had excellent taste." "Did you know her?" Lily asked with the directness that only children possess. Clara's hands stilled on the camera. "I, we met once briefly, but I didn't really know her, no." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "I wish I remembered her better. I was only 4 when she died. Dad has lots of pictures, but they feel like pictures of pictures, you know, not like real memories." Clara's heart squeezed. She understood exactly what Lily meant, the difference between documented moments and lived experiences, between photographs and memories. "Would you like me to show you how this camera works?" she asked. "We could take some pictures tonight after dinner." Lily's face lit up. "Really, Dad? Did you hear that Clara's going to teach me how to use Mom's camera?" Ben appeared in the doorway, his expression soft as he watched his daughter's excitement. "That's very kind of you, Clara. Are you sure you don't mind?" "I don't mind at all," Clara said and meant it. There was something about Lily's enthusiasm that reminded Clara why she had fallen in love with photography in the first place, not for the technical perfection or the professional recognition, but for the simple magic of capturing light and turning it into memory. Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. Ben had managed to salvage the garlic bread, and the spaghetti was perfectly al dente. Lily peppered Clara with questions about her work, her equipment, her favorite subjects to photograph. Clara found herself talking more than she had in months. sharing stories about challenging shoots and difficult clients, about the satisfaction of finding the perfect angle and the frustration of harsh lighting. Do you ever take pictures of people? Lily asked, twirling spaghetti with practiced skill. Clara paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. Sometimes, but I prefer architecture, buildings, landscapes, things that don't move. Why? It was such a simple question, but Clara found herself struggling to answer. Why did she avoid photographing people? Buildings are predictable, she said finally. They don't change their minds or get uncomfortable or decide they don't like how they look. But people are more interesting, Lily protested. Like that building you photographed last week, Dad showed me the article in the newspaper. It's pretty, but it doesn't have feelings or stories or secrets. Ben smiled at his daughter. Lily's been on a detective story kick lately. Everything has secrets. Everything does have secrets, Lily said seriously. Like Clara, what's your secret? Clara nearly choked on her water. My what? Your secret, Lily repeated patiently. Everyone has them. Mine is that I still sleep with my stuffed whale even though I'm 9. Dad's is that he talks to Mom's picture when he thinks I can't hear him. What's yours? Ben's face flushed slightly. Lily, you can't just ask people about their secrets. But Clara found herself answering anyway, drawn by Lily's honest curiosity and Ben's gentle embarrassment. I suppose my secret is that I take pictures of the same thing every morning, she said quietly. What thing? Lily asked. Clara looked at Ben, who was watching her with interest rather than judgment. Your father, she said, working in the yard for about 6 years now. The admission hung in the air between them. Ben's expression shifted through several emotions, surprise, confusion, and something that might have been understanding. Why? He asked quietly. Clara set down her water glass, her hands trembling slightly. I'm not sure, she said honestly. At first it was just, you were there and the light was good and you moved with such purpose. It was like watching someone who knew exactly who they were and what they were supposed to be doing. She paused, aware that she was revealing more than she intended. I guess I envied that certainty. Lily looked back and forth between the two adults, clearly sensing undercurrents she didn't fully understand. Can I see the pictures? She asked. Lily, Ben said gently. No, it's okay, Clara said. Maybe after we try out your mom's camera, if you're both interested. Ben nodded slowly. I'd like that, he said, and Clara felt something warm unfurl in her chest at his words. After dinner, Clara and Lily sat on the back porch with Sarah's old Polaroid, waiting for the film to develop. Clara had shown Lily the basics, how to hold the camera steady, how to frame a shot, how to work with available light. They had taken pictures of the garden of Ben washing dishes through the kitchen window of Lily's hands, holding a fallen maple leaf. Photography is about patience, Clara explained, as they waited for the latest image to appear. You take the picture, but then you have to wait to see what you really captured. Lily watched the blank film square with intense concentration. Like Christmas morning, she said. You know there's a present, but you don't know what it is yet. Clara smiled. That's a perfect analogy. Slowly, the image began to emerge on the film. Ben at the kitchen sink, his profile lit by the warm light from inside, a small smile on his face as he looked out at them on the porch. It was a good photograph, Clara realized. More than good, it captured something essential about Ben, something gentle and present and alive. I took that, Lily asked, wonder in her voice. You did, Clara confirmed. How does it feel? Lily studied the photograph for a long moment. Like magic, she said finally, but also like I was really seeing him, not just looking, but seeing. Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. Lily had understood something in 5 minutes that Clara had been struggling with for years, the difference between observation and connection, between watching and witnessing. Can you teach me more? Lily asked. I want to take pictures of everything, Dad, my friends, my teachers, Mrs. Chen next door when she's watering her flowers. I want to really see them. I'd love to teach you more, Clara said, and she meant it completely. Ben appeared in the doorway, dish towel still over his shoulder. How's it going out here? Look what I made, Lily said, holding up her photograph with pride. Ben took the image and studied it with serious attention. This is incredible, Lily. You have a real eye for this. Clara says it's about seeing, not just looking, Lily reported, and she's going to teach me more, right, Clara? Clara looked up at Ben, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. If that's okay with your dad. More than okay, Ben said quietly. Thank you for dinner, for helping with Lily's project, for everything. Their eyes met and held for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. Clara felt something shift between them, some barrier dissolving without her permission. It was terrifying and wonderful and completely unexpected. I should go, Clara said, standing abruptly. It's getting late and I have an early shoot tomorrow. Of course, Ben said, but Clara thought she heard disappointment in his voice. Let me walk you home. That's not necessary. Clara, Ben said gently, it's 17 steps. I think I can manage it. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks as she realized Ben had noticed her counting. They walked a short distance to Clara's front door in comfortable silence, Lily trailing behind them, still examining her photograph in the porch light. Thank you, Ben said again when they reached Clara's steps. It was the most normal evening we've had in a long time. Lily needs more of that, more people. Clara nodded, understanding what he wasn't saying. A 9-year-old girl needed more than just her grieving father. She needed community connection, the presence of other adults who cared about her well-being. I meant what I said about teaching her photography, Clara said. She's got real talent. I can see that. Ben paused, seeming to wrestle with something. Clara, those pictures you mentioned, the ones of me working in the yard. I hope you know I don't mind. I'm flattered, I think, that someone thought I was worth watching. Clara felt her breath catch. You are, she said quietly. Worth watching, I mean. The admission hung between them in the cool evening air. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car passed on the street behind them. Normal sounds of a normal neighborhood evening, but Clara felt as if the world had tilted slightly on its axis. Good night, Clara, Ben said softly. Good night, she whispered back. Clara watched from her window as Ben and Lily walked back to their house. Lily chattering excitedly about apertures and composition while Ben listened with the patience of a father accustomed to his daughter's enthusiasms. When their door closed behind them, Clara remained at the window for a long time thinking about secrets and photographs and the difference between watching and being seen. For 6 years, she had observed Ben Rodriguez from a safe distance, documenting his life, while carefully avoiding her own. But tonight, for the first time, he had looked back. Tonight, he had seen her seeing him. And instead of feeling exposed or embarrassed, Clara felt something she hadn't experienced in years. She felt alive. 3 weeks after the dinner that changed everything, Clara found herself standing in Ben's kitchen at 6 in the morning, making coffee for 3 people instead of 1. It had started innocently enough. Lily's enthusiasm for photography had grown exponentially after that first evening with her mother's Polaroid. She wanted lessons, wanted to understand composition and lighting, wanted to capture everything she saw with the hungry eyes of someone discovering a new language. Ben, overwhelmed by his daughter's sudden passion and his own complete ignorance of camera equipment, had asked Clara home for help. Just a few basic lessons, he had said, standing at Clara's front door with that apologetic smile she was beginning to know well. I can pay you, of course, professional rates. Clara had refused the money but accepted the teaching opportunity. What she hadn't anticipated was how quickly the lessons would expand beyond photography. Lily needed help with a science project. Ben's ancient laptop had crashed and needed Clara's technical expertise. The Rodriguez garbage disposal had given up entirely, and Clara, surprising herself, had remembered enough from her father's weekend repair projects to diagnose the problem. Somehow, without either of them planning it, Clara had become part of the morning routine at the Rodriguez house. She measured coffee into Ben's machine, a much better model than her own ancient thing, and listened to the familiar sounds of the house waking up. Ben's shower running upstairs, Lily's voice as she talked to herself while getting dressed, a steady stream of consciousness that covered everything from marine biology to the injustices of having to wear shoes when bare feet were clearly superior. Clara had her own key now. Ben had given it to her last week when Lily had forgotten her science project and Clara had offered to drop it off at school. For emergencies, Ben had said, but they both knew it was more than that. It was trust, the kind that built slowly between people who were learning to depend on each other. The coffee finished brewing just as Ben appeared in the kitchen, his dark hair still damp from the shower. Wearing the navy blue scrubs that meant he had surgery scheduled at the veterinary clinic. You don't have to do this every day, he said, but he accepted the mug she handed him with obvious gratitude. I'm perfectly capable of making coffee. Your coffee tastes like water, Clara replied, settling into what had become her chair at the small kitchen table. And Lily likes having me here when you leave early. It was true. On mornings when Ben had to be at the clinic before 7, Lily would appear in Clara's kitchen at exactly 7:15, backpack on her shoulders and her mother's camera around her neck, ready for the walk to school. Clara had begun adjusting her own schedule to accommodate these morning escorts, telling herself it was about being a good neighbor, about helping a single father manage his complicated life. She was lying to herself, and she knew it. "Dad, Clara, look what I found," Lily announced as she bounded into the kitchen still in pajamas, but carrying something cupped carefully in her hands. Ben automatically moved to pour orange juice into Lily's favorite glass, the one with dolphins on it that Clara had bought at a marine biology exhibit they had visited together the previous weekend. These small domestic rhythms had developed naturally without discussion or formal arrangement. Clara kept oatmeal in Ben's pantry. Ben had started buying the expensive coffee beans Clara preferred. Lily had claimed the chair between them as her permanent seat. "What did you find, sweetheart?" Ben asked. Lily opened her hands to reveal a small gray feather perfectly intact and marked with delicate white stripes. "It was on my windowsill. Clara, do you think it came from a northern mockingbird? We studied them in science class." Clara examined the feather, carefully aware that both Ben and Lily were watching her with the expectation that she would know the answer. Somehow, over the past few weeks, she had become the family expert on everything from bird identification to the best settings for photographing moving subjects. "I think you're right," Clara said. "Mockingbirds are common in this area and the size and coloring match. Where's your field guide?" Lily raced off to find her bird identification book, another recent acquisition purchased during a family trip to the bookstore that had felt remarkably like the kind of outing Clara had always imagined normal families took together. When Lily's footsteps disappeared up the stairs, Ben sat down across from Clara with his coffee. "She's different since you've been coming around," he said quietly. "Happier, more engaged with the world." Clara stirred her coffee, unnecessarily avoiding his eyes. "She's a remarkable kid. She just needed someone to share her interests with." "It's more than that." Ben's voice was soft, thoughtful. "She's had teachers and other adults in her life since Sarah died. But with you, it's different. She trusts you completely." The mention of Sarah still created a small tension in Clara's chest. She had been waiting for the right moment to tell Ben about the photograph, about her brief encounter with his wife 6 years ago. But as the days passed and she became more integrated into their lives, the truth felt both more important and more dangerous to reveal. "Ben," Clara began, then stopped as Lily's feet thundered back down the stairs. "Found it," Lily announced, waving the field guide triumphantly. "And I was right, Northern Mockingbird, page 47. Whoosh. Ben smiled at his daughter's excitement. "Good detective work. Now go get dressed for school. Clara's going to walk with you this morning since I have to leave early." "Can we stop at the park and take pictures of the birds?" Lily asked hopefully. "If we have time," Clara agreed, "but school comes first." Lily grinned and headed back upstairs to change. Ben finished his coffee and gathered his keys and wallet from the counter. "Thank you," he said, pausing beside Clara's chair, "for all of this. I know it's not what you signed up for when you agreed to help with one photography lesson." Clara looked up at him, struck by how natural it felt to have him moving through the morning routine around her. How right it seemed to be part of the quiet domestic moments that made up a family's daily life. "I didn't sign up for it," she said honestly, "but I'm not complaining." Ben's hand briefly touched her shoulder as he passed behind her chair, a casual gesture that sent warmth spreading through Clara's chest. "I'll be home around 6. Lily has soccer practice after school, and I'll pick her up on my way back." "I'll be here," Clara said, then realized what she had committed to. She would be here in Ben's house when he came home from work. It was the kind of assumption that married couples made, the kind of domestic arrangement that implied permanence and belonging. But instead of panic, Clara felt only a quiet sense of rightness. She belonged here in this sunny kitchen, with its collection of Lily's art projects taped to the refrigerator, and its smell of coffee and toast, and the lingering sweetness of Ben's shampoo. She belonged to these morning conversations and evening walks in the gentle chaos of family life. It was terrifying and wonderful and completely unexpected. Clara spent the morning at the historic theater photographing the restoration work for her client's marketing materials. But her mind kept drifting back to Ben's kitchen, to the way Lily had curled up against her side on the couch the night before, while they looked through photography books together, to the expression on Ben's face when he'd found them there. Something soft and pleased and unmistakably fond. She was editing the theater photos when her phone rang at 11:30. Ben's name appeared on the screen, and Clara felt her stomach drop. He never called during work hours unless something was wrong. Clara, Ben's voice was tight with stress. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm at the hospital with a client whose dog was hit by a car, and Lily's school just called. She's in the nurse's office with a fever, and they need someone to pick her up. I'll go get her, Clara said immediately, already saving her work and reaching for her car keys. Are you sure? I know you're working, and I can try to… Ben, Clara's voice was firm. I'll handle it. Which school pickup procedure do I need to follow? Ben gave her the details, quickly, relief evident in his voice. Thank you, I owe you… You don't owe me anything, Clara interrupted. She's… Clara paused, realizing what she had been about to say. She's mine too. I care about her, about both of you. There was silence on Ben's end of the phone, and Clara wondered if she had said too much, revealed feelings that were still too new and fragile for daylight examination. Clara, Ben said finally, his voice soft with something that might have been wonder. We care about you too. Lily was indeed running a fever, flushed and miserable in the school nurse's office, clutching her mother's camera like a talisman. Clara signed the necessary paperwork with steady hands, accepting the responsibility of caring for someone else's child with a calmness that surprised her. I feel terrible, Lily mumbled as Clara helped her into the passenger seat of her car. And I was supposed to photograph the playground for my assignment today. The playground will still be there tomorrow, Clara said gently, adjusting the air conditioning to make Lily more comfortable. Right now we need to get you home and into bed. Are you going to stay with me? Lily asked, her voice small and worried. Dad won't be home until tonight. Clara felt something clench in her chest at the trust in Lily's question, at the assumption that Clara would be there when needed. Of course I'm staying, she said. We'll make some soup and watch terrible daytime television and let you rest until your dad gets home. Lily smiled for the first time that morning. Can we look at your photographs, the ones you took of Dad? Clara's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Maybe when you're feeling better. I've been wanting to ask about those, Lily said, settling back against the seat with a sigh. Dad says you've been taking pictures of him for years, before you even knew us. That's true, Clara admitted. Why, it was such a simple question, but Clara found herself struggling with the answer. How could she explain to a 9-year-old that sometimes people fell in love quietly from a distance, protecting themselves from the possibility of rejection or loss? How could she describe the way Ben's morning routine had become the anchor point of her days, the thing that made her small life feel connected to something larger and more meaningful? I think, Clara said carefully, that your father is a very good man, and sometimes when you see goodness in the world, you want to capture it, keep it safe somehow. Lily considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important subjects. Do you love him? She asked finally. Clara nearly missed the turn into their neighborhood. Lily. Because I think he loves you, Lily continued matter-of-factly. He smiles different when you're around, and he hums when he's making dinner now, which he never used to do. Clara pulled into Ben's driveway and turned off the engine, her heart racing. What would you think about that? She asked quietly. If your dad and I cared about each other that way, Lily unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to face Clara directly. Even with fever-bright eyes and flushed cheeks, she looked remarkably serious and grown up. I would think, Lily said slowly, that Mom would want Dad to be happy. And you make him happy. You make me happy too. She paused, then added with devastating honesty, I used to be scared that Dad was lonely all the time. But he's not lonely when you're here. Clara felt tears threaten at the corners of her eyes. You're a very wise little girl. I know, Lily said with a small smile. Now can we go inside? I really do feel terrible. They spent the afternoon on the couch, Lily curled under her favorite blanket while Clara worked on her laptop nearby. Clara had called her client to reschedule the theater shoot, claiming a family emergency without hesitation. The fact that she considered Lily family enough to justify the emergency didn't occur to her until later. Lily dozed fitfully, waking occasionally to sip the ginger ale Clara had found in Ben's refrigerator, or to ask for another cool washcloth for her forehead. During one of these wakeful periods, she asked again about the photographs. I promise I'm not being nosy, Lily said, though her fever-bright eyes suggested she was feeling slightly better. I just want to understand. You've been watching Dad for years, but you never tried to talk to him before that morning with the fence. Clara saved her work and gave Lily her full attention. I was scared, she said honestly. Of what? Of. Clara paused, searching for words that would make sense to a 9-year-old. Have you ever wanted something so much that you were afraid to try to get it because what if you couldn't have it? Lily nodded thoughtfully. Like when I wanted to try out for the school photography club, but I was scared they'd say I wasn't good enough. Exactly like that. Your dad seemed so complete. He had you and his work and his life all figured out. I didn't think there was room for someone like me. Someone like you, oh, Clara smiled sadly. Someone who watches from windows instead of joining in. Someone who's better with cameras than with people. Lily shifted on the couch, tucking her feet under Clara's leg, in a gesture so natural it made Clara's heart ache. But you're good with people, Lily protested. You're good with me, and with Dad, and Mrs. Chen loves talking to you about her garden. That's different, Clara said. That's because you all make it easy. Maybe, Lily said, closing her eyes against her pillow. Dad was waiting for you to be ready. Maybe he was scared too. The idea had never occurred to Clara that Ben might have been aware of her observation, might have been as uncertain about crossing the invisible line between neighbors and something more as she had been. But thinking back to that first morning when their eyes had met through her camera lens, she remembered his smile, the way he had raised his coffee mug in greeting, rather than turning away in embarrassment or annoyance. Maybe he had been waiting too. Ben came home at 6:15 carrying takeout bags from the Thai restaurant down the street and wearing an expression of barely controlled worry that immediately transformed to relief when he saw Lily curled peacefully on the couch with Clara. How is she? He asked quietly, setting down the food and moving to feel Lily's forehead with the back of his hand. Better, Clara reported. The fever broke about an hour ago and she's been asking for food. I heard that, Lily said without opening her eyes. And I smell pad thai. Ben smiled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. I thought you might be hungry. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Gross but better, Lily said, sitting up slowly. Clara took good care of me. She made soup and let me watch cooking shows and didn't make me do my homework. I figured homework could wait a day, Clara said, suddenly uncertain whether she had overstepped some parental boundary. I hope that's okay. Ben's expression was soft as he looked at her. More than okay, thank you. For picking her up, for staying with her, for... He gestured helplessly as if trying to encompass everything Clara had done, everything she had become in their lives. For being family, Lily finished matter-of-factly, and the words hung in the air between them like a challenge and a promise. Clara felt her breath catch. Family. It was what she had been afraid to name, this growing sense of belonging and responsibility and love that extended beyond herself for the first time in years. Yes, Ben said quietly, his eyes never leaving Clara's face. For being family. After Lily had eaten and been tucked into bed with strict instructions to call if she needed anything, Ben and Clara found themselves alone in the kitchen cleaning up the dinner dishes with the comfortable efficiency they had developed over weeks of shared meals. I keep thinking I should ask you about this, Ben said, suddenly pausing with a dishwater sudsy plate in his hands. About how much time you're spending here, how much of your life you're rearranging for us. I don't want you to feel obligated. Clara took the plate from his hands and dried it carefully. I don't feel obligated. Then what do you feel? It was a fair question, and Clara found herself considering it seriously as she put the plate away in Ben's cabinet, a cabinet whose organization she now knew by heart in a kitchen that had become as familiar as her own. I feel like I've been holding my breath for 6 years, she said finally, and now I can breathe again. Ben turned to face her fully, his hands still dripping with dishwater. Clara, I have to tell you something, Clara interrupted, knowing that if she didn't say it now, she might never find the courage again. About Sarah, about that photograph in your living room. Ben's expression shifted to careful attention. Okay, Clara dried her hands on the kitchen towel, buying herself time to find the right words. I was the photographer. 6 years ago at the gallery downtown. Sarah bought that picture from me. Ben stared at her, processing this information. You knew her? Not really. We spoke for maybe 10 minutes. She looked at the photograph for a long time before she bought it, and she said, boy, Clara paused, remembering what saw it. She said it captured what she wanted your family to feel like. Safe and connected and full of quiet love. Why didn't you tell me before? Clara heard the question behind his question. Why hadn't she told him when she first realized the connection? Why had she let him talk about the unknown talented photographer when she was standing right there? Because I was afraid, Clara admitted. Afraid you'd think I had some ulterior motive for getting close to you and Lily. Afraid you'd feel like I was somehow replacing her. Ben was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. Are you, he asked finally, trying to replace her? No, Clara said immediately. I could never replace Sarah. I wouldn't want to. But I also can't pretend that what I feel for you is just friendship or just concern for Lily or just... She gestured helplessly. I'm in love with you, Ben. I have been for longer than I care to admit. And I love Lily like she's my own daughter, and I don't know what to do with that. The admission hung between them in the quiet kitchen, accompanied only by the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Lily's bedroom door closing as she settled in for the night. Ben stepped closer, close enough that Clara could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his expression had shifted from surprise to something warmer and more complex. What you do with it, he said quietly, is let me tell you that I love you too. Clara's breath caught. Ben, I've been in love with you for weeks. Ben continued, his voice soft and sure. Maybe longer. Maybe since that first morning when I looked up and saw you really seeing me, not just looking. You made me remember what it felt like to want to be seen. Clara felt tears threaten at the corners of her eyes. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be part of a family. I don't know how to love someone without being terrified of losing them. Ben reached up and cupped her face gently in his hands. Neither do I, he said. I've been terrified since the day I realized I was falling for you. Terrified that loving someone again would somehow dishonor Sarah's memory. Terrified that I'd mess it up. Terrified that you'd realize you deserve someone without so much baggage. You're not baggage, Clara said fiercely. You and Lily, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Ben smiled and Clara felt her heart flip over at the sight of it, the same smile she had captured through her camera lens dozens of times, but now directed at her, meant for her, full of love and possibility and hope. So what do we do now, she asked. Now, Ben said, leaning down until his forehead rested against hers. We figure it out together, all three of us. And then he kissed her, soft and careful, and full of promises. Neither of them was quite ready to speak aloud. Clara kissed him back, tasting possibility and hope and the terrifying, wonderful reality of letting someone past all her carefully constructed walls. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, Ben smiled again and said, For what it's worth, I think Sarah would have liked you. She always said she wanted Lily to grow up around people who understood that love was about seeing and being seen. Clara felt something settle in her chest at his words. Not the sharp pain of comparison she had feared, but a sense of continuity, of being part of a story that was larger than her own loneliness. I hope so, she said quietly. I know so, Ben replied and kissed her again. Later that night, after Ben had gone to check on Lily and Clara had finished loading the dishwasher, they found themselves on the back porch, sharing a bottle of wine and looking up at the stars barely visible through Seattle's urban glow. I have to ask, Ben said, settling into the porch swing beside Clara. Those photographs you took of me, can I see them sometime? Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. They're not very good, just documentation, really. Documentation of what? Clara considered the question, thinking about the hundreds of images stored on her hard drive, the careful catalog of Ben's morning routines and seasonal projects, and quiet moments of contentment. Of someone I was learning to love, she said finally. Of a life I wanted to be part of but didn't know how to join. Ben was quiet for a moment, processing this. I'd still like to see them, he said, if you're willing to share them. I'm curious about how I looked through your eyes all those years. You looked like home, Clara said without thinking, then felt her face burn with embarrassment at the admission. But Ben just smiled and pulled her closer against his side. That's exactly how you look to me now, he said. Like home. They sat in comfortable silence, Clara's head on Ben's shoulder, both of them trying to process the enormity of what had shifted between them. 6 years of careful distance collapsed into intimacy in the space of a single conversation. 6 years of watching and waiting and wondering transformed into the beginning of something real and complicated and beautiful. What happens now? Clara asked eventually. Now, Ben said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. We take it one day at a time. You keep coming over for morning coffee. Lily keeps asking you 17,000 questions about photography. I keep finding excuses to stand a little closer to you than strictly necessary. Clara laughed softly. That sounds perfect. It does, doesn't it? Ben agreed, and Clara could hear the wonder in his voice, as if he too was surprised by how simple happiness could be when you finally stop running from it. Above them, a few stars struggled against the city's light pollution, and in the distance they could hear the familiar sounds of their neighborhoods settling in for the night. It was an ordinary evening on an ordinary Tuesday, but Clara knew she would remember it forever, the night she stopped being afraid of love, the night she let herself be seen completely, the night she finally came home. 2 months into what Ben jokingly called their official unofficial courtship, Clara received the phone call that would change everything. She was in her home studio editing photographs from a corporate shoot when her phone buzzed with a New York area code. Clara almost didn't answer. She had learned to be wary of unknown numbers, but something made her pick up on the fourth ring. Clara Hayes, this is Miranda Chen from the Whitmore Gallery in Chelsea. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. Clara straightened in her chair. The Whitmore Gallery was legendary in photography circles, small exclusive known for launching careers and making reputations. Not at all. How can I help you? I've been following your architectural work for several years, and I'm calling with an opportunity I think might interest you. We're planning a solo exhibition for next spring, Urban Solitude Contemporary Visions, and we'd like you to be our featured artist. The words seemed to echo in Clara's quiet studio. Solo exhibition, Whitmore Gallery, featured artist. These were the phrases that represented everything she had worked toward for the past 15 years, dreams she had almost given up on after her last gallery submission had been rejected 3 years ago. I'm honored, Clara managed. Could you tell me more about what you have in mind? Miranda's vision was ambitious. 60 photographs spanning Clara's career displayed in the gallery's main space for 6 weeks. A catalog with an essay by one of the art world's most respected critics. Opening night reception with collectors, curators, and critics from across the country. The kind of exhibition that could establish Clara as more than just a competent freelancer, it could make her an artist. There's just one catch, Miranda continued. We'd need you to be in New York for the duration of the exhibition. 6 weeks minimum, possibly longer if we extend the show. There would be artist talks, media interviews, meetings with potential collectors. It's a significant time commitment, but the exposure would be invaluable for your career. 6 weeks. Clara's mind immediately went to Lily's science fair next month, at Ben's birthday at the end of March, to the photography classes she had started teaching at the community center. 6 weeks away from the life she had just begun to build. When would you need an answer? Clara asked. End of the week if possible. I know it's quick, but we're working around several other artists' schedules. Miranda paused. Clara, I hope you understand what an opportunity this is. Whitmore doesn't offer solo exhibitions lightly. We believe your work has something unique to say about contemporary urban life. After Miranda hung up, Clara sat in her studio surrounded by images of Seattle's architecture, her hands shaking slightly as she processed what had just happened. Everything she had worked for, dreamed of, sacrificed, for handed to her at the moment when accepting it would be the most complicated. She thought about her father's words at Evergreen Manor: pictures aren't for keeping the past, sweetheart. They're for understanding the present. What did the present look like? Clara looked around her studio, seeing it with fresh eyes. The careful organization of her equipment, the professional lighting setup, the pristine workspace that had once felt like sanctuary, but now felt somehow incomplete. On her desk, next to her laptop, sat a framed photograph Lily had taken during one of their weekend walks, a candid shot of Clara and Ben laughing at something off camera, their hands almost touching as they walked. Lily had titled it My Family in her careful 9-year-old handwriting. Clara picked up the phone to call Ben, then put it down again. She needed to think this through clearly before she talked to anyone. She needed to understand what she was really choosing between. That evening, Clara walked the 17 steps to Ben's house with more uncertainty than she had felt since that first dinner 2 months ago. Ben was in the kitchen as usual making dinner, while Lily sat at the table working on homework. The domestic scene that had become so familiar now felt fragile, like something that could disappear if she said the wrong words. "How was your day?" Ben asked, looking up from the stir-fry he was preparing. Something in Clara's expression must have given her away because his smile faded slightly. "Everything okay?" "I need to talk to you both about something," Clara said, settling into her usual chair beside Lily. "I got a phone call today, a good phone call, but also complicated." Lily looked up from her math homework with immediate interest. At 9, she had developed an impressive ability to read adult moods and detect when something significant was happening. Clara explained about the gallery, about the exhibition, about the opportunity that could change everything about her career. She tried to keep her voice neutral, to present the facts without revealing how conflicted she felt about the choice she was facing. "That's amazing," Ben said, but Clara could hear the careful control in his voice. "Clara, this is what you've been working toward your whole career." "It sounds really important," Lily added, though her voice was smaller than usual. "Are you going to go?" "I don't know," Clara said honestly. "It would mean being in New York for at least 6 weeks, maybe longer. I'd miss your science fair and your dad's birthday and—" She trailed off, not knowing how to articulate all the small moments she would be giving up. The kitchen was quiet except for the soft sizzle of vegetables in Ben's pan. Clara could see him processing the information, trying to figure out what she needed from him: support for her career or permission to stay. "When do you have to decide?" Ben asked finally. "By the end of the week." Ben nodded slowly. "That's not much time." "No," Clara agreed, "it's not." Lily, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. "Clara, do you want to go?" It was such a direct question, asked with the brutal honesty that only children possessed. Clara found herself struggling to answer. "I want the recognition," she said carefully. "I want my work to be seen and appreciated. But I don't want to leave you, either of you." "But it's only 6 weeks," Ben said, though Clara could hear him trying to convince himself as much as her. "That's not very long, isn't it?" Clara asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them. 6 weeks wasn't long in the abstract, but it felt enormous when measured against the fragile new life they had built together. Clara had never been away from Lily for more than a day since they had become close. She had never gone more than 24 hours without seeing Ben since the night they had first kissed. "I think," Lily said, with the wisdom that sometimes surprised Clara with its depth, "that you should go." Both adults turned to look at her in surprise. "Lily," Ben started. "No, listen," Lily interrupted. "Clara, you love photography more than anything. Well, except maybe us. But you love it a lot. And this sounds like something really important for photographers. If you don't go, you might always wonder what would have happened." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. "What if going changes everything? What if I come back and we're not? What if this doesn't exist anymore?" Lily reached across the table and took Clara's hand with the matter-of-fact affection that had become so natural between them. "Then we'll build it again," she said simply, "but different and maybe better." Ben was watching his daughter with an expression of wonder and pride. "When did you get so wise?" he asked. "I've always been wise," Lily replied with dignity. "Adults just don't usually listen." Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed and Clara and Ben were cleaning up the dinner dishes, Ben finally said what Clara had been waiting to hear. "You should go." Clara's hand stilled on the plate she was drying. "Ben, I'm terrified," he continued quietly. "I'm terrified that you'll realize you don't need this small life with us. I'm terrified that you'll meet someone in New York who can offer you things I can't. I'm terrified that 6 weeks will turn into 6 months or 6 years." He paused, setting down the dish he had been washing. "But I'm more terrified of what it would mean if you didn't go." "What do you mean?" Ben turned to face her fully. Sarah used to talk about paths not taken. She was offered a fellowship in grad school that would have meant 2 years in Europe studying art history. She turned it down because we had just gotten serious, and she was afraid of what the distance would do to our relationship. Clara felt her stomach clench. Did she regret it? She said she didn't, but sometimes I'd catch her looking at art books or museum catalogs, and I could see her wondering what might have been different. Ben's voice was soft with old pain. "I never want you to look at me that way. I never want you to wonder what your life might have been like if you hadn't chosen us." Clara set down the dish towel and moved closer to Ben. "It's not the same thing." "On it Clara considered this. Sarah made her choice when you were just dating. We're not just dating, Ben. What we have is... She struggled to find words for the depth of commitment she felt. I'm in love with your daughter. I know what her favorite breakfast is and how she likes her hair braided, and that she talks to herself when she's working through a problem. I know you take your coffee black and that you read medical journals to fall asleep, and that you still talk to Sarah's picture when you think no one is listening. Ben's eyes widened slightly at this admission. I know these things because this is my family, Clara continued. Not just someone I'm dating, us dating, my family, and families don't disappear because of geography. Don't they? Ben asked quietly. Clara, you've spent your whole adult life avoiding commitment because you're afraid of loss. Are you sure you won't get to New York and remember why that felt safer? The question hit Clara like a physical blow, partly because it was so accurate. She had spent years choosing solitude over the risk of abandonment, choosing observation over participation. Even now, part of her was terrified that Ben was right, that the distance would remind her why loving people was so dangerous. But she was also different now than she had been 6 months ago. She had learned what it felt like to be essential to other people, to have her presence matter in their daily lives. She had discovered that love didn't have to mean loss, that choosing to care about people could expand her world rather than diminish it. I'm sure, she said and meant it. But Ben, I need you to be sure I'm too. I need to know that if I go to New York, you'll be here when I come back. I'll be here, Ben said immediately. We'll both be here. Even if I call you crying at 2 in the morning because I miss you. Especially then. Even if I decide I want to extend the exhibition. Ben hesitated for just a moment before answering. Yes, even then. Clara studied his face, looking for any sign of doubt or reservation. She found worry certainly and sadness at the thought of separation. But underneath those emotions, she saw something else: pride in her accomplishment, excitement for her opportunity, and a love solid enough to survive uncertainty. Okay, she said finally. I'll go. Ben smiled, though Clara could see the effort it cost him. Good, it's the right choice. Clara stepped closer and wrapped her arms around his waist, burying her face against his chest. I'm going to miss you so much. Ben's arms tightened around her. I'm going to miss you too. But Clara, I'm also going to be incredibly proud of you. The next morning, Clara called Miranda Chen and accepted the exhibition opportunity. The conversation felt surreal, agreeing to uproot her life for 6 weeks, committing to a level of professional exposure she had never experienced, saying yes to everything she had worked toward, while simultaneously feeling like she was walking away from everything that mattered most. After she hung up, Clara sat in her kitchen with her coffee and stared out the window at Ben's house. She could see him in his backyard working on some project with his usual focused attention. In a few weeks, she would be looking out at Manhattan instead of this familiar view. She would be drinking coffee in a hotel room instead of watching Ben start his day. The thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. A soft knock at her door interrupted these thoughts. Clara opened it to find Lily standing on her porch, backpack slung over her shoulders, ready for school. Dad said you're going to New York, Lily announced without preamble. I am. For the important photography thing? Yes, Lily nodded seriously. I brought you something. She dug around in her backpack and pulled out a small wrapped package. It's not much, but I thought, well, just open it. Clara unwrapped the gift carefully. Inside was a small digital photo frame, the kind designed to cycle through stored images. The screen was currently displaying a picture Lily had taken the previous weekend, Clara and Ben building a fort in the living room, both of them laughing as the structure collapsed around them. I put in about 50 pictures, Lily explained, of me and Dad and you and all of us together. So when you're in New York and you miss us, you can look at them and remember that we're still here. Clara felt tears threaten at the corners of her eyes. Lily, this is perfect. There's also a picture of Mrs. Chen's cat, Lily added helpfully, because you said he reminds you of that grumpy critic who didn't like your last gallery submission. Clara laughed despite her emotional state. You're going to take good care of your dad while I'm gone, aren't you? Obviously, Lily said with dignity. But Clara, you have to promise to take good care of yourself too, and to call us every day, and to eat actual meals, not just coffee and whatever. I promise. Lily seemed satisfied with this commitment. She hugged Clara briefly but fiercely, then headed off towards school with the resilience that never failed to amaze Clara. At the end of the block, she turned back and waved. "Bring me something cool from New York," she called. "I will," Clara called back, watching until Lily disappeared around the corner. The 3 weeks before Clara's departure passed with the strange intensity that comes from knowing time is limited. Every ordinary moment felt precious grocery shopping, with Ben helping Lily with homework family dinners that stretched late into the evening, as none of them wanted to let go of the day. Clara found herself taking pictures, constantly documenting everything she would miss. Ben making pancakes on Sunday morning, his hair still messy from sleep. Lily explaining marine biology to her stuffed whale with scientific precision. The view from Ben's back porch at sunset. The way the light fell across their kitchen table during dinner. "You're going to wear out that camera," Ben teased one evening as Clara photographed him reading to Lily before bed. "I want to remember everything," Clara said, lowering the camera. "Every detail." Ben's expression softened. "We're not going anywhere, you know. All of this will be here when you get back." Clara nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, that the life she had built here was more fragile than she wanted to admit. She had spent so many years afraid of loss that even temporary separation felt dangerous. 2 days before her flight, Clara's father had one of his good days. She found him in the sunroom at Evergreen Manor, looking through the photo album they had been building together. "You're going to New York," he said as she settled beside him. It wasn't a question. The staff had briefed him on her upcoming trip during one of his clear periods. "I am, for work." Henry nodded thoughtfully. "Your mother would have been proud. She always said you saw things differently than other people." Clara felt the familiar ache that came with reminders of her mother. Margaret Hayes had died when Clara was 22, just old enough to think she understood loss, but too young to realize how it would shape everything that came after. "I found something for you." Henry continued, reaching into a folder beside his chair. He pulled out an old photograph, one Clara had never seen before. It showed her parents when they were young, probably in their 20s, sitting on what looked like a train platform with suitcases beside them. They were holding hands and looking at each other rather than the camera, clearly in love, and possibly nervous about whatever journey they were undertaking. "That was taken right before we moved from Portland to Seattle," Henry explained. "We were terrified, leaving everything we knew, starting over somewhere new. But we were excited too because we were doing it together." Clara studied the photograph, struck by how young her parents looked, how uncertain and hopeful and brave. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because sometimes the best thing you can do for love is trust it to survive distance. Your mother and I spent 40 years together, Clara. We survived job changes and family crises and all kinds of separations. The love that's worth keeping is the love that doesn't need you to stay small to protect it." Clara felt something shift in her understanding, some fear she had been carrying without fully acknowledging it. She had been afraid that leaving even temporarily would somehow diminish what she had with Ben and Lily. But her father was right. Real love wasn't so fragile that it couldn't survive growth and opportunity and change. "Keep the picture," Henry said, "to remind you that some journeys are worth taking even when they're scary." Clara's last night in Seattle was quiet. She had finished packing, confirmed her travel arrangements, and said goodbye to everyone except the two people who mattered most. Ben had made dinner, nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad and garlic bread that didn't burn this time. Lily had set the table with unusual care, adding flowers from the neighbor's garden and the fancy napkins they usually save for holidays. "This feels like a celebration and a funeral at the same time," Clara observed as they sat down to eat. "That's because it's both," Lily said matter-of-factly. "We're celebrating your big opportunity and mourning that you won't be here to make Dad's coffee in the morning." Ben laughed. "I think I can manage coffee, Lily." "Your coffee tastes like water," Lily and Clara said in unison, then looked at each other and burst into giggles. The evening passed too quickly and too slowly, time behaving the way it does when you're trying to hold on to something that's already slipping away. They played board games and looked through photo albums and carefully avoided talking about tomorrow. When it was time for Lily to go to bed, she hugged Clara longer than usual. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "and I'm going to miss you every day." "I'm going to miss you too," Clara whispered back, "but I'll call you tomorrow night and the night after that and every night until I come home." After Lily went upstairs, Clara and Ben found themselves on the back porch with a bottle of wine, just as they had the night they first kissed. The parallel wasn't lost on either of them. "Are you nervous?" Ben asked. "Terrified," Clara admitted. "About the exhibition, about being away from you, about everything changing while I'm gone." "Nothing's going to change," Ben said firmly. Clara looked at him in the dim porch light, memorizing the details she would miss most. The small scar above his eyebrow, the way his hair always fell slightly to the left, the patient kindness in his dark eyes. "Everything's going to change," she said quietly. "I'm going to change. This opportunity, it's going to make me different somehow. More confident, maybe, or more sure of what I want. And when I come back, we'll have to figure out how to fit that new version of me into what we've built here." Ben considered this with the thoughtfulness she had come to love about him. "Maybe that's not a bad thing," he said finally. "Maybe we're supposed to keep growing and changing. Maybe the best relationships are the ones that make room for that." Clara felt something settle in her chest at his words. "You're not afraid I'll come back different?" "I'm hoping you will," Ben said, reaching for her hand. "I want you to have everything you've worked for, Clara. I want you to shine as bright as you can, and then I want you to come home and tell me all about it." Clara felt tears threatening again, but they were good tears this time, tears of gratitude for this man who loved her enough to want her to grow, even if it meant temporary separation. "I love you," she said, "more than I thought I could love anyone." "I love you too," Ben replied, "more than enough to let you go when you need to go." They sat together in comfortable silence, Clara's head on Ben's shoulder, both of them trying to store up the moment against the weeks ahead. Above them, the Seattle sky was clear for once, and Clara could actually see a few stars struggling against the city's glow. "Look," Ben said softly, pointing upward, "the stars are out for your farewell." Clara smiled against his shoulder. "They'll still be there when I come back." "Everything will still be here when you come back," Ben promised. And for the first time since Miranda Chen's phone call, Clara completely believed him. 6 weeks later, Clara stood in the main gallery space at Whitmore, surrounded by her life's work displayed on pristine white walls, and felt like she was seeing her photographs for the first time. The exhibition had exceeded every expectation. Critical acclaim, collector interest, media attention that had already led to inquiries about future shows. 3 major art publications had featured her work, and a documentary filmmaker was interested in making a short film about her artistic process. It was everything she had dreamed of, and she was miserable. Not because the success felt hollow, it didn't. Clara was genuinely proud of what she had accomplished, thrilled by the recognition her work was receiving. But the joy felt incomplete without Ben and Lily to share it with. Every triumph was accompanied by the wish that they could be there to celebrate with her. She had kept her promise to call every night, and the digital photo frame Lily had given her lived on the bedside table in her hotel room, cycling through images of home. But video calls and photographs couldn't replace the texture of daily life. Ben's terrible morning coffee, Lily's endless questions about everything, the comfortable rhythm of shared meals and quiet evenings. Clara, Miranda Chen, appeared at her elbow, elegant in a black dress that probably cost more than Clara's monthly rent. "There's someone I'd like you to meet. David Morrison from the Times is here, and he's very interested in your work." Clara nodded and followed Miranda across the gallery, slipping into the professional persona she had developed over the past 6 weeks. She had become good at this, talking about her artistic vision, discussing technique and inspirations, charming potential collectors and critics. But she felt like she was performing a version of herself, playing the role of successful artist, while her real self remained homesick and incomplete. The evening passed in a blur of champagne and conversations, business cards exchanged, and future possibilities discussed. Clara smiled and engaged and represented her work beautifully, but part of her mind was calculating time zones and wondering what Ben and Lily were doing for dinner. It was past 11 when the last guests finally left, and Clara could escape back to her hotel. She kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the bed, still wearing the black dress she had bought specifically for gallery events. The silence felt oppressive after the noise of the reception. Clara reached for her phone to call Ben, then realized it was past 2 in the morning in Seattle. Too late to call, even for someone who knew Ben was a night owl. Instead, she opened her laptop and began typing an email. "Ben. The opening was incredible. Everything we hoped for and more. The review in the Times is already online if you if you want to read it. Miranda thinks we might extend the show another 2 weeks based on the response. I should be thrilled. I am thrilled, but I keep looking around for you and Lily to share it with, and you're not here, and that makes everything feel incomplete. I miss you. I miss Lily. I miss our terrible Sunday morning pancakes and the way she talks to herself when she's doing homework. I miss your actual terrible coffee. I miss feeling like I'm part of something bigger than just my own ambition. 2 more weeks and I'll be home. I can't wait. Love, Clara. She sent the email before she could second-guess herself, then opened the photo frame Lily had given her and let herself cry a little at the images of the life she had left behind. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Ben Saul, the Times Review Online. We're so proud of you. Can't wait to hear everything. Love you. Clara smiled through her tears and typed back, love you too, more than you know. 2 weeks later, Seattle Clara's flight landed at SeaTac at 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon in April. She had been gone for 8 weeks total, and every minute of the journey home had felt like an eternity. Ben and Lily were waiting for her at the gate, both of them bouncing slightly with excitement. The sight of them, Ben in his familiar navy scrubs, Lily wearing a homemade Welcome Home Clara sweater t-shirt made Clara's chest tight with emotion. This was what she had been missing, what no amount of professional success could replace. This was home. Lily reached her first, launching herself into Clara's arms with the kind of enthusiasm that nearly knocked them both over. Clara, you're back. I have so much to tell you. Did you bring me something cool from New York? Dad's been practicing, making good coffee, but it still tastes like water. Mrs. Chen's cat had kittens, and she said you can photograph them when you're ready. Ben approached more slowly, his expression soft with relief and joy. Hi, he said simply. Hi, Clara replied, one arm still around Lily, the other reaching for Ben. I missed you. We missed you too, Ben said, pulling both of them into a family hug that felt like everything Clara had been missing condensed into a single moment. They drove home through familiar Seattle neighborhoods, Clara feeling like she was seeing everything for the first time. The mountains in the distance, the way the afternoon light fell across the Sound, the tree-lined streets of their neighborhood, everything looked more vivid, more precious after 8 weeks away. So tell us everything, Lily demanded as soon as they were settled in Ben's kitchen with cups of coffee, which was indeed still terrible, and the cookies Mrs. Chen had baked to celebrate Clara's return. Was it glamorous? Did you meet famous people? Are you going to be rich now? Clara laughed, settling into her chair at the kitchen table like she had never left. It was incredible, overwhelming but incredible. And I did meet some interesting people, though I'm not sure about rich. She told them about the opening night, about the reviews and the collector interest, about the documentary filmmaker and the possibilities for future exhibitions. But what she found herself talking about most were the small moments of homesickness, missing their Sunday morning routine, wishing Ben could see the city through her eyes, wanting Lily's opinion on everything. I kept taking pictures of things I wanted to show you, Clara said, pulling out her phone. Street art that reminded me of your drawings, Lily. A veterinary clinic I passed every day that looked exactly like the one where your dad works. A little girl in Central Park who was photographing pigeons with the same serious concentration you have when you're working. Ben and Lily crowded around to look at her photos, exclaiming over the images of New York that Clara had captured through the lens of missing them. It looks amazing, Ben said quietly. I'm so proud of what you accomplished. Are you? Clara asked, hearing a note of uncertainty in her own voice. I know 8 weeks was longer than we planned. I know the extension was hard on both of you. Ben reached across the table and took her hand. Clara, you just had a solo exhibition at one of the most prestigious galleries in the country. Art critics are calling your work luminous and essential. Of course I'm proud. We both are. Plus, Lily added pragmatically, you're back now, and you brought me a snow globe with the Empire State Building, so really everyone wins. Clara laughed, struck by how easily she had slipped back into the rhythm of their life together. The fears she had harbored about everything, changing about distance, damaging what they had built, they seemed foolish now. If anything, being away had made her more certain of what mattered most. There's something else, Clara said, suddenly nervous about the decision she had made during her last week in New York. Miranda offered me representation. She wants to be my exclusive gallery dealer, help me develop a national presence. It would mean more travel, more exhibitions, more time away sometimes. The kitchen went quiet. Clara could see Ben processing this information, calculating what it might mean for their relationship, for their family. "That's a big opportunity," he said carefully. "It is, but I told her I needed to think about it. I needed to come home and figure out what I actually wanted, not just what looked good on paper." "And?" Ben asked. Clara looked around the kitchen that had become more home to her than any place she had ever lived. She thought about the past weeks, the professional triumph, the loneliness, the way every success had felt incomplete without the people she loved to share it with. "I want both," she said finally. "I want the career and the recognition and the opportunities to grow as an artist. But I want them while being part of this family, while being part of this life we've built together. I don't want to choose between love and ambition anymore." Ben smiled, and Clara saw relief in his expression along with pride and understanding. "Then don't choose. We'll figure out how to make it all work." "Are you sure it might mean more separations, more uncertainty?" "Clara," Ben interrupted gently. 8 weeks ago, you were terrified that leaving would change everything. Did it?" Clara considered the question seriously. Had the experience changed her? Absolutely. She felt more confident in her work, more certain of her artistic vision, more comfortable with the idea of professional success. But had it changed how she felt about Ben and Lily, about the life they were building together? If anything, the separation had reinforced how essential they were to her happiness. "It made me more sure of what I want," she said finally. "All of it, the work and the family and the life where I get to have both." Lily, who had been listening to this conversation with the serious attention she brought to all important adult discussions, suddenly spoke up. "So you're going to stay and also go away sometimes for important photography things?" "If that's okay with you, Clara said. Lily considered this with the gravity of someone making a major life decision. "I think," she said finally, "that sounds perfect. Because this way I get to be proud of you and miss you and then have you come home with cool presents from wherever you went." Clara felt tears threaten at the corners of her eyes. "You are the wisest 9-year-old in the world." "I know," Lily said with satisfaction. "Now can we look at the rest of your New York pictures? And can you teach me how to take photographs like that art critic said, luminous and essential?" Clara laughed and pulled both of them closer, marveling at how simple happiness could be when you finally stop being afraid of it. "I can try," she said, "but I think you're already pretty luminous and essential, exactly as you are." 1 year later, Clara stood in Ben's backyard, their backyard now officially, since she had sold her house and moved in 6 months ago, setting up lights for an outdoor photography session. The occasion was Lily's 10th birthday, but the real celebration was the family they had become. The past year had been full of changes, all of them good. Clara had accepted Miranda's representation and had 2 more exhibitions scheduled, including a group show in Los Angeles that the whole family would attend together. She had started teaching photography workshops for adults, turning Ben's garage into a proper studio space. Lily had won second place in the state photography competition for young artists with a series of portraits she had titled People I Love. But the best change was the most ordinary one, the way their 3 separate lives had woven together into something seamless and strong. Clara's camera equipment lived alongside Ben's veterinary textbooks. Lily's art projects covered both refrigerators. The morning coffee routine now included all 3 of them, and Ben had finally learned to make coffee that didn't taste like water. "Clara, are you ready?" Ben called from the back porch. "The birthday girl is getting impatient." "Almost," Clara called back, adjusting the angle of one more light. She was photographing Lily's birthday party, but she was also documenting this moment. The life they had built, the happiness they had found, the family that had grown from careful observation into deep, abiding love. Lily appeared in the backyard wearing her favorite dress and a crown made of flowers that Ben had somehow learned to weave together. At 10, she was all elbows and enthusiasm and questions about everything, but she had also developed a photographer's eye for detail and composition. "Can I help with the lights?" Lily asked. "Always," Clara replied, making room for her assistant. As they worked together to set up the perfect shot, Clara thought about the photograph hanging in their living room, not the one Sarah had bought all those years ago, though that was still there too, but a new one. Clara had had it made for Ben's birthday, a triptych showing the evolution of their relationship. The first image was one of her early photographs of Ben working in the yard taken through her bedroom window, with all the longing and distance of those careful years. The second was from their first dinner together, Lily and Ben laughing at something off camera, while Clara remained behind the lens. The third was from last month, all three of them in the frame arms around each other, no one hiding behind a camera. She had titled the series The Quiet Between Us, and it captured everything she had learned about love and art and the courage it took to step out from behind the camera and into the light. Okay, Clara announced as the last light was positioned perfectly. I think we're ready. Ben emerged from the house carrying a birthday cake that was slightly lopsided but decorated with impressive attention to marine biology themes. Mrs. Chen from next door arrived with her new kittens in a carrier, along with the other neighbors who had become part of their extended family. Clara's father was there too, having one of his good days and delighting in Lily's excitement. As Clara began photographing the party, she found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them all to this moment. 2 years ago, she had been a woman who watched life through windows, documenting other people's happiness while carefully avoiding her own. Now she was part of the celebration, part of the messy, beautiful complexity of a life shared with people she loved. Clara, get in the picture, Lily called out as she prepared to blow out her candles. You can't always be behind the camera. Clara smiled and handed her camera to Ben, then moved to stand beside Lily as the assembled group sang happy birthday. This time she was in front of the lens part of the story instead of just documenting it. But as Ben focused the camera and prepared to capture the moment, Clara realized something had shifted in her understanding of what it meant to be a photographer. It wasn't about choosing between being behind the camera or in front of it. It was about knowing when to document and when to participate, when to observe and when to be present. The camera clicked, preserving the moment, Lily laughing with joy, surrounded by the people who loved her most. Clara standing close enough to be part of the celebration, but still seeing it with an artist's eye for light and composition and the fleeting beauty of a perfect ordinary moment. Later that evening, after the guests had gone home and Lily had been tucked into bed with her new camera equipment and promises of photography lessons all summer long, Clara and Ben sat on their back porch with coffee and the comfortable silence of two people who no longer needed to fill every quiet moment with words. Do you ever think about that first morning? Ben asked eventually. When you photographed me fixing the fence. Clara smiled, remembering the embarrassment and excitement of being caught in her observation, the way Ben had smiled and raised his coffee mug instead of looking away. Every day, she said. It was the moment everything changed, even though I didn't know it at the time. I knew, Ben said quietly. Clara turned to look at him in surprise. You knew that you were going to matter to me, that you already mattered to me. Ben's voice was soft with memory. I'd been aware of you for months, the way you left early in the morning that with all that photography equipment, the way you came home late and always looked a little lonely. When I saw you in your window that morning with the Tamero and our eyes met, I felt like I was finally seeing you seeing me. Clara felt her breath catch. Why didn't you say anything sooner? Ben smiled. Because you needed to be ready. And so did I. We both needed to learn that love doesn't have to mean losing yourself. It can mean finding yourself in someone else's story. Clara reached across the space between their chairs and took Ben's hand. I love our story, she said simply. Even the parts where you were terrified, especially those parts. They're what make the rest of it matter. They sat together in the growing darkness, watching the lights come on in their neighbors' houses, listening to the familiar sounds of their neighborhood settling in for the night. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car passed on the street in front of their house. Normal sounds of a normal evening, but Clara felt the deep contentment that came from knowing she was exactly where she belonged. Ben, Clara said eventually, thank you. For what Clara thought about all the things she could say, for waiting while she learned to be brave, for trusting her to leave and come back, for letting her be part of his and Lily's life, for showing her that love could be both safe and adventurous at the same time. For teaching me the difference between watching and living, she said finally. Ben squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for teaching me that some things are worth the wait. Above them, the Seattle sky was unusually clear, and Clara could see more stars than usual struggling against the city's glow. She thought about all the photographs she had taken over the years, thousands of images, documenting buildings and landscapes, and the careful architecture of a life lived at a distance. But the pictures that mattered most now weren't the ones in her professional portfolio. They were the ones she carried in her memory. Ben's smile the first morning he really saw her. Lily's face the first time she successfully worked her mother's camera, the moment she realized that home wasn't a place you observed, but a place you chose to build with the people you loved. "I have an idea for a new project," Clara said suddenly. "Yeah, what kind of project?" Clara smiled, already envisioning the series in her mind. "Portraits of families, but not posed studio shots, real moments. The quiet between people who love each other, the way they look at each other when they think no one is watching, the ordinary magic of daily life." Ben nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds beautiful and very you. I want to call it the space between," Clara continued, her voice growing excited as the idea took shape, "because I've learned that the most important things happen in those spaces between observation and participation, between fear and love, between being alone and being family." "When would you start?" Clara looked at Ben, then toward the house where Lily was sleeping peacefully, surrounded by the evidence of a perfect birthday celebration. "I think I already have," she said. "I think I've been working on it for 2 years without realizing it." Ben leaned over and kissed her softly, tasting like coffee and contentment and the promise of all the ordinary, extraordinary days ahead of them. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling. "I love you," Clara whispered. "I love you too," Ben replied. "All of you, the photographer, the neighbor, the woman who makes terrible coffee, jokes but perfect family dinners, the person who taught my daughter to see the world through an artist's eyes." Clara felt tears threaten at the corners of her eyes, but they were good tears, tears of gratitude for this life she had stumbled into by accident and chosen on purpose every day since. "Come on," Ben said, standing and extending his hand to help her up. "Let's go inside. Tomorrow's Sunday and Lily will want pancakes." Clara took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. "Your pancakes or eine?" "Ours," Ben said simply, and Clara felt her heart flip at the pronoun that encompassed everything they had become. They walked inside together, turning off lights and checking locks, with the comfortable routine of two people who had learned that the best love stories weren't about dramatic gestures or perfect timing, but about choosing each other again and again and again in all the small moments that made up a shared life. In the morning, Clara would wake up in the bed she now shared with Ben, in the house that had become home to all three of them. She would make coffee, good coffee, while Ben started pancakes and Lily appeared in her pajamas, already planning the day's photographic adventures. They would eat breakfast together and read the Sunday paper and argue gently about whose turn it was to do dishes. It would be an ordinary Sunday morning in an ordinary life, but Clara would see it with an artist's eye for the extraordinary hiding in plain sight. She would notice the way Ben's hair stuck up on one side when he first woke up, the way Lily's face lit up when she talked about something that excited her, the way the morning light fell across their kitchen table and made even the mundane magical. And if she felt moved to photograph these moments, well, that was okay too, because she had finally learned that the best art didn't come from keeping yourself separate from life, but from diving headfirst into it and bringing your camera along for the journey. The quiet between them was no longer the space of observation and longing it had once been. Now it was the comfortable silence of people who had found their place in the world, the peaceful pause between one shared breath and the next. Clara had spent years watching other people's lives from a safe distance, but now she was living her own story, and it was more beautiful than anything she could have imagined from behind her bedroom window. She was home.